Welcome to the Physician Associate Podcast.
Hello, welcome to this episode of the Physician Associate Podcast. My name is James. Today I'm joined by the Faculty of Physician Associates President Kate Straughton and Vice President Michelle. Welcome to the podcast, both.
Great to be here.
Yeah, good to be here.
Kate, do you want to start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, no worries. So I'm Kate Straughton. I'm president of the FPA, as you've said, and I have been since 2019. I qualified as a PA in 2009 from the University of Birmingham, and my clinical background is working in acute medicine. I've been working in PA education for around 6 years, and I'm currently working as a lecturer at the University of Birmingham on the PA programme there.
Perfect, thank you. And Michelle?
So hi, I'm Michelle Chapman. I'm a physician associate working in acute medicine. I work down at Surrey and Sussex Healthcare Trust down in Redhill in Surrey. I'm the Vice President of the Faculty of PAs and have been involved with the FPA since 2016 when I was first appointed as a board member. I guess from a kind of weekly point of view, I sort of spend half of my time clinical and half of my time sort of promoting the PA profession. So I also have a role as the lead PA for the KSS School of PAs and also a Health Education England PA ambassador, which is sort of a similar role that overlaps really. And that's 50% of my time as well.
Brilliant. And thanks so much, both of you, for giving up your time to come on the podcast today.
Thank you.
I thought it'd be really useful for the other physician associates and the students out there, the education team, all of the people who are connected into the PA world to find out a bit more about what the Faculty of Physician Associates is all about, also some of the things that it doesn't do that other organisations are responsible for, and just a bit about the history of the organisation and where it's going in the future and the plans that you guys have got for the faculty in the future. So Kate, do you want to tell us a little bit about the Faculty of Physician Associates at the Royal College of Physicians?
Sure. So the FPA, the Faculty of Physician Associates, is the professional body that represent PAs across the UK. It's been at the RCP since July 2015. Prior to that, it was a different organisation known as UCAPA, so the UK Association of Physician Assistants originally, and then Associates once we got our name changed. I was on the board for that since 2009 as a student rep, and then never really left, so I had a variety of different roles. But the main kind of role really of the FPA has always been about speaking on behalf of PAs, advocating for PAs. You know, we're a national voice where we advocate for a level playing field across the four nations, across different regions. And I guess we try to create sort of a central hub that everyone can come back to in order to make sure that there's a voice in the room for that profession. And that's really important when you're working at national level. So when you're talking about national strategy, if you didn't have that kind of central point, then we just wouldn't get heard as a profession. You know, there's only a couple of thousand of us, which is a lot in numbers compared to what it was a couple of years ago, but compared to other professions out there, it's tiny. And so having that sort of central place, that central organisation is really key to actually being able to have a view and have an opinion and help to drive us forward.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Kate. And Michelle, who does the FPA work with in terms of a national level? What other organisations do you engage with?
So there's many organisations that the FPA work with. I think it's quite important to say that the FPA sits within the Royal College of Physicians as well. So we're part of that as an overall group. So there's lots of close links with them as a kind of a core organisation. We are sort of part of them. Other people that we get involved with and work closely with is Health Education England, regularly meeting them, also working with the GMC, the Department of Health and Social Care, NHS Employers, NHS Improvement and NHS England. We have a stakeholder group. So as part of the FPA board, we have people that are represented on that, so different Royal Colleges, and that can be Royal College of Psychiatry, Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health, the Royal College of Surgery. And we've also had involvement with other organisations like the Society of Acute Medicine, the British Association of Dermatologists and things like that. So lots of different stakeholder groups we try to sort of reach out to, and they also have a part and learn about the FPA, and we help support them.
And just to add on to that, Michelle, we're also increasingly working hard to try and get a representation across the four nations. So we also have regular meetings with HEIW, but also colleagues in Northern Ireland, in Scotland, to make sure that actually we're not just talking about English PAs, we are talking about PAs across the whole UK.
Kate, can you explain a little bit more about what UCAPA was, where it came from, and how it morphed into what we now know as the faculty?
Sure. So It originally started in 2005, and it was set up by the American PAs that were working over here at the time. There weren't many, there was a small handful. I guess it was predominantly to look at CPD opportunities and to do a bit of networking. You know, they were working in a different country. And so it's just about making sure that, you know, they had that opportunity to network together. And I think an important part of it for them at the time, this is obviously before UK trained PAs were around, it meant that if they formed together as a group, they were able to apply for accreditation for their CPD, which meant that they didn't need to go back to the States in order to get all of their CPD requirements. So I think that was what sort of drove it in the very first instance. I've seen the minutes of the first couple of meetings, and even back then in 2005, there was a real strong sort of passion, I guess, for making sure that as this profession grew in the UK, there was a way to bring people together, and there was a way to sort of support and to have that national view. And even, you know, way back then in 2005, 2006, they were starting to have conversations about regulation, about how the role could progress in the future, how you would obtain prescribing rights and that sort of thing. So even way back then, they were sort of laying the groundwork for what we've been doing since. Kind of fast forward on a couple of years and you start to get a few UK trained PAs in the picture as well. We were approached actually in 2013. I have an email from the Royal College of Physicians who invited myself and Karen Roberts to the RCP to go and have a chat about PAs and how PAs worked and, you know, how it might work in the future. I can remember being absolutely terrified. You know, I can remember going into the office and just, I'd never been anywhere like the RCP building before. It felt huge and formal and terrifying. And I remember having a big chat with Sir Richard, who took a lot of time that day to talk to us about the profession and understand it. And then that later went on to become a more formal relationship, I guess. And we ended up launching kind of a shadow board initially that ran alongside UCAPA while the FPA was being set up. And then in 2015, the FPA actually stopped.
Being part of the Faculty of Physician Associates within the Royal College of Physicians seemed to elevate the status of physician associates. It was quite a big stepping stone, wasn't it, to become part of the Royal College? Well, what impact do you recognise that having?
From my perspective, I think people started to listen to us a lot more. I think it helped a lot in my mind with things like regulation. It made us more legitimate, I think. People were more interested in what we had to say. And a big part of that was probably more interested in what the RCP were doing. And then following that, you know, we then started to get a lot more people interested in running courses. We then ended up with a lot more graduates, and it all sort of snowballed into the kind of numbers that we're talking about now. But in 2015, there were probably, I can't quite remember, but, you know, there were maybe 5 courses running, something like that. There weren't maybe 6, there weren't huge amounts. Whereas now, you know, we're running at 36 at the moment. We're talking massively different numbers. And I think a big part of that for me is just the fact that we have the RCP involvement.
GMC regulation will have that same impact for physician associates in terms of the recognition professionally from other bodies and other interested parties. Do you think that will be the next step in terms of legitimising the profession?
I think it definitely will come. It will bring that. That will definitely help the profession as a whole. We continue to work with the GMC to ensure that that's a smooth process. I think it will definitely encourage the profession and help encourage it to grow. And I think PAs will then be working to the top of their scope of practice.
Regulation is an interesting one. There's 2 different sides to it. There's the side where, as Michelle said, we'll be able to do more. It will increase our scope of practice. It may well open additional doors for us in terms of prescribing and that sort of thing in the future. But I think there's also an element that needs to be discussed around responsibilities of people, of PAs. So as a regulated profession, we will be held to a certain standard. And I think it's really important that people are aware of that and people sort of factor that into their working lives and their everyday lives, I guess, as well. I think the FPA are going to be doing a lot of support for our members around that and the changes that regulation will bring over the coming months leading up to regulation. But it's an important thing to start to think about. So I think there are a lot of positives. And I think for the bulk of PA, we'll only really experience the positive side. But there is that additional element as well that needs to be considered by people.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess professionalism in all walks of life, including online,
Indeed.
Social media, will come under perhaps higher scrutiny once GMC regulation comes into force. So obviously you guys run the Faculty of PAs as President and Vice President. What streams of work does the faculty do?
There's a whole load of different things, really. I guess we cover all different aspects of PA life, really. We're involved in PA education in that we have representatives on the PA Schools Council. And so we were able to sort of engage with student issues. We will be the owners of the new curriculum that's being devised at the moment. We currently hold the CCF, but we'll also be the holders for the new curriculum that courses will have to work to. In terms of supporting students, we have things like national sort of student network. So each course has a representative. They feed into regional groups. That feeds into a national rep who sits on our board. So I feel like we have a good idea of what's happening in the PA student world. We understand some of the issues and so on. And so we can really help to speak on behalf of students and to support their experiences. Once PAs are qualified, we've obviously got the work stream around regulation and working with the GMC for that. We've also got sort of themes around professional standards, around development in terms of CPD and the conference and that kind of work that happens. The FPA work isn't necessarily visible. So, a lot of people ask us, what do the FPA do for me? And it's challenging because a lot of the nature of the work is about engagement. It's about conversations that happen. It's about representing at meetings. And we do see evidence of that, but it's not necessarily evidence that the FPA brings. It's things like, NHS employers publishing job profiles about PAs. Well, when you look at the other MAPS groups, for example, they're only just starting that work. We're slightly ahead of the curve in that because the FPA has been pushing for it for a long time with NHS employers and working with them to do that. I think another angle of what we do is we're a central point for collaboration. So we have a stakeholders group, which is sort of attached to our board. And as Michelle said earlier, we work with Royal College of Psychiatry, Royal College of Peace and Child Health, etc., the other colleges. And I think what we're doing really is we're utilising that central point, or us as a central point, to help people to develop the specialist areas for support. And I think it's important that we have that kind of specialist input as we grow. A lot of PAs work in specialist areas, as we see on the census. A lot of PAs are therefore developing those specialist skills. But we are generalists. The core of what we are is that we are a generalist. And so we need to kind of maintain our professional identity, but we also need to make sure that we don't lose any flexibility. I sometimes worry that if we go too far thinking of ourselves as specialist skills, that we'll lose the generality. And with that maybe comes the lack of flexibility, for example, to be able to move between specialties. And at the moment, I feel like we've kind of got the best of both worlds. There are PAs out there who have been working in the same specialty for a long time and are really developing some good specialist skills and input. There are also PAs out there who move specialties, reasonably frequently and enjoy that generalist role. So I think it's important that we help to keep everyone together and help keep that collaboration, because you will get PAs who want to move. You'll get PAs who have jobs between two specialties, for example.
So how did you guys get involved with the FPA, and how can people get on the FPA board in the future if they're interested? I assume you're elected to the posts.
Yes, I was elected to the FPA board back in 2016, and that was where you had to sort of put yourself forward and be seconded, I believe. And then for the posts of vice president and president, we both had to do a similar thing. We had to write a statement and be elected by the membership of the FPA. And that's the same with the board positions, with the exception of secretary, which is by a sort of appointment application and interview process.
So from our perspective, we're not the be all and end all by any means, and we need to develop the future of the profession. The faculty will go on way beyond Michelle and I, and actually we need, the future PAs, the PAs coming in and working now to step up to get involved in that as they go forward. The roles, for the most part, are volunteer roles. I couldn't be more grateful for the board that I have. Everyone gives up their clinical time. The only person that has a paid role is me, which is 1 day a week. So I get salaried, I get seconded from my place of employment 1 day per week for the faculty president role. But all of the rest of the roles are volunteers. They're people taking on all of these projects and all of this support in their own time. And I couldn't be more grateful for that, if I'm honest. So last year, there were a few sort of issues raised at the FPA about a lack of transparency, and also about the fact that the FPA is a bit of a clique, and also that it's not representative of the PA profession. And that's really challenging. And actually, initially, it was really hard to hear, because I've I've never felt like that. I appreciate I'm a white female, but I do really try hard to speak to as many members as I can, as do my colleagues. And, we really do try to put across as sort of national a view as we can. But I appreciate the point there. We had lots of long conversations about it last summer, and you'll have all seen the various newsletters and web posts and things that went up about it. I am totally on board that we need a more representative FPA board. We need a group of people that represent the FPA that look like the profession, that understand the issues of the profession. And that's in terms of any demographic, that's in terms of ethnicity, but also in age, in terms of where people live in the UK. So we would very much encourage people, and I will be harping on about this a lot in FPA newsletters and all that sort of stuff, but we would very much be encouraging people to step forward and to represent, and to, it's really hard. Well, it's an additional piece of work on top of your already incredibly full lives, and we absolutely get that. It's also a bit scary when you haven't been involved in that sort of stuff before, but we're here to support with that. That's not a problem. We've all been new at this, and it does get easier. And I think that we're really keen to get the best board that we can get, to really understand the views and able to represent the profession in the best way that we can.
I asked my students when I said I was going to do this podcast with you guys, I was like, I've got the president and the vice president coming on. Is there anything as students you'd like me to ask them? And their big issue is around funding. That's, I think, what they're finding difficult, and it must be the same, I guess, for lots of PA students at the moment. Is the FPA talking to anybody, HEE, about funding to expand the PA profession?
Yeah, certainly HEE know that it's an issue, and not just about student funding, but also things like funding for placements and how that works and the potential knock-on effect. But we're also working with the PA Schools Council to go back to, for example, the Student Loans Company to tackle why PAs aren't allowed to have loans to support them in the way that, for example, graduate medicine might or graduate nursing might. And I think previously it's probably a bit of a critical mass thing, in that there probably weren't enough of us that we were really on their radar. There's so many PA students out there, and they need the support. They really do need the support. So that's the kind of thing that we're going in collaboration with PA Schools Council as the educators, just to go and really make the point and see what we can do. We're also working, again, with PA Schools Council to speak to people like the NHS Business Services Authority, who look at funding across the NHS for student support and that kind of thing, amongst other things. So we'll be having conversations with those over the upcoming months as well, to see what might be available. One
of the questions the students came up with me, I feel a bit awkward asking, and I hope you don't find this offensive. There's 2,500 PAs roughly, and £200 a year in subscription fees.
Yep.
£500,000 a year. And they were just wondering, where does that £500,000 go?
So I think this is where we need to remember that the FPA is part of a larger organisation and not just an isolated, financially independent group on its own. And so when we work as the FPA, we're able to take advantage of things like the communications team, the conferencing team, the policy team within the RCP, who support us to do our daily work. And so part of what happens with the FPA income is it's not separate FPA income. There's obviously its own budget, but it goes into a pot, essentially into the RCP central point. Everyone within the RCP, the education, the membership, the global services, all of that all support each other.
Add that there is a small team within the FPA that works solely for the physician associate profession as well, and they're a fantastic group, and they've absolutely do a lot of the work in the background that doesn't also get seen and isn't that visible either. There's lots of inquiries that come into the FPA that they deal with, and lots of other things that go on. I think also the RCP assessments team and the exam, all of the work around that, it is run within the Royal College and is actually not solely run by the FPA anymore.
Thanks, Michelle. And in your answer there, you mentioned about the national exams. Do you want to explain a little bit about how the faculty has input over the national exams?
So within the FPA sort of board, there is an examiner's lead. That's just been appointed as Jade Moore, taking over from Professor Jim Parle, who's done a fantastic job. They then work with the assessments unit, so they're based up in Liverpool, and they actually run the day-to-day running and organisation of that exam. Jade will be part of the board review group following the national exams. The nationals take place 3 times a year, and obviously that's been quite challenging over the last year given COVID, and has had to be adapted, and they've worked extremely hard to do that, and to make sure that these exams go ahead.
So on top of that, we've got the development group. So the assessment unit essentially sits within education, if you like, within the college. So they're not linked to the FPA in that sense. We obviously use the FPA document of the CCF in terms of the curriculum, in terms of what things are linked to, what things are blueprinted to. But beyond that, the education directorate actually has oversight of the exam and sort of the overall say in how it runs. The FPA have a strong voice there. So the FPA have a representative at the development group, which does what it says on the tin. It develops the national exam. And also there are a couple of independent PAs who are not board members who sit on that group as well. And then there's a number of other groups which PAs and FPA board members are involved in as well, in terms of quality control, item development, all that sort of stuff.
And in terms of looking ahead for the faculty of PAs and wider the PA profession, is there anything that you think we can do better at the moment, or anything that you're planning for the future?
I think it's really about, us really establishing that role, and when we get regulated, it's about creating those strong foundations. We're working to develop the career framework to help provide a bit of structure around how PAs can develop within their career and try to keep PAs clinicals. It's all about sort of retention as well, and trying to ensure PAs are being developed and can work to the top of their sort of scope of practice and be really incorporated into their clinical teams and be utilised well. I think for taking the profession forward, we've already touched on that we need to develop sort of the next level of leaders. So we need to grow our leadership team. We need to encourage people to come forward and be part of the FPA group to take the profession forward. We're going to be looking at developing the leadership course, looking at different educational opportunities as well, and seeing how PAs can really develop in their roles.
I think another key part is about working with patients. So I think that's one of the things that we really wanted to focus on, sort of leading up to regulation as well, is ensuring that patients understand who we are and what we can do as well. So we've been working with the representatives on the RCP group, the Patient Carer Network. We're aiming to sort of look at information that might be available, look at how we can do that. I know a couple of PAs have done projects on that before. I've seen, for example, posters at the FPA conference. And so I'd be really keen to learn from those experiences and understand how we might do this in the best possible way.
Brilliant, thank you.
So I think for us, really, what's really important is that we're able to do all of this work. We love doing this work. We know there's a lot of it, and it's really challenging, but actually it's really interesting, and it's great to be involved at that national level and to have that drive. But I'm also incredibly conscious that without the PAs that are out there working in the clinical areas in the shop floor, we wouldn't have these jobs. These roles wouldn't exist, and they wouldn't need to exist. We're also really grateful to all the PAs that are out there that are doing this fantastic ambassadorial role. The number of people that contact me that say, well, we've been thinking about this for a while, but then I met a PA and, I was absolutely blown away. Their knowledge, their commitment, It genuinely is a delight. We really enjoy what we do, and we couldn't do it without you all, really. So we just wanted to say thank you, I guess.
And from me to you guys, to the board, thank you, because I hadn't appreciated that you were all volunteers and that you only get paid one day a week to do your work, Kate. So it's a phenomenal amount of work, I'm sure, working on this nationally. So thank you. And I would echo what you've said earlier. For anybody who's listening to the podcast who thinks that they could get involved and could contribute to the work of the FPA and get involved, represent your profession and grow the next generation of leaders to lead the faculty in the future. Thanks so much for getting on the podcast with me, guys. Are you happy for PAs or anybody else who's been listening to this, if they have any questions, to get in touch with the faculty? What's the best way for them to do that?
Absolutely. So there is an email address which goes to the faculty inbox, which is fpa@rcp.ac.uk. So again, in line with what we were talking about earlier, there is a team that support us in the faculty. They are a small team and it is a busy inbox. They actually asked that if we could get into this podcast that we did, that they know that sometimes, we all know sometimes it takes us a little while to get back to people, and that's not because anyone doesn't care, but it's just because there are few people and lots of emails to respond to. So yeah, please do know that if you email us in, we will see it, we will respond to it, managing the registration for all of the new PAs that have just qualified and that kind of thing. They are incredibly stretched, but yes, please do email in, because they will see them and they will pass them on.
And James, I just wanted to say a big thank you to you as well for inviting us today. So thank you for that.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks so much for getting on the podcast with me, guys. You can get in touch with me at the Physician Associate Podcast. We're on Facebook and Twitter at PA Podcast UK. And I hope you join me again for the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Physician Associate Podcast.